Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is loosen the brake line that's here. What we're going to do is loosen this screw on top here using a 5mm Allen key. Now you don't need to unscrew it completely, you only need to loosen it so that it's free. As you can see here, it can move freely regardless of the brake line. Now we're going to reset everything, so this I'm going to turn towards the right, so clockwise, and that way this little piece here will be at the maximum inside. Now what we want to do is loosen those two screws that are on top here. Same thing, we don't need to remove the screws, and it's with the same 5mm Allen key that we loosen the brake caliper. You don't need to remove the screws completely, just so it's loose and that the brake caliper kind of moves freely. As you can see now, I can move the brake caliper from left to right. And the point of that is to align the brake caliper with the disc. That way it's parallel. Not only is it parallel, but we want it as close to the brake pad on the left here as possible. So if you're a little bit more in the center, and if you're too close to the right brake pad, the one that's outside, then it won't brake well. So you want to be as close as you can to the left side without actually touching the brake pad. So I'll loosen here just a bit more to kind of play around with it. And now I'm just going to tighten, but not too much, just so that I can get an idea of where we're at. Now if I spin the wheel, we're good. I'm just going to show you if it's not straight. Let's say if I move it this way, you can hear a noise, but now I'm putting it back into a parallel position as close as I can to the left brake pad, and I'm tightening here. Now I'll tighten a bit more both sides just to see if we're still good. Spinning the wheel, disc is not touching the pads, that's perfect. Now I can tighten fully. Now you might see that sometimes when you're tightening, it makes the brake caliper move, and then it won't be aligned. So you just need to sometimes hold it in place, that way it doesn't move while you're tightening it. There we go. Now we're going to move the brake caliper arm, and I want it as close as I can without it touching the disc. So if I bring it forward, and I'm pulling on the cable here. So now I'm a bit more too forward. I'll loosen it back a bit until I don't hear any noise. Still hearing a little bit. I will go down. Perfect, now I'm not hearing, and I'm going to tighten the screw here. Now I want to tighten this fully. And there we go. Now what I'll do is start doing more smaller adjustments, because right now if I press on the brake handle, it might be a little too loose. I like to have it nice and tight. If you like it loose, a bit looser, then it's fine. But now you can do smaller adjustments with this screw here, which you turn anti-clockwise this time until you hear the brake pads touching, or until it's at the maximum point here, which it is. So that's perfect. Now before we move on to the handlebars, there's just something I might show you that in this case I don't need to do, but I'll show you in case you do. So sometimes the left brake pad is not out enough of the caliper, or it's a bit too much out, and you kind of need to adjust it. Because right now we're only adjusting and we're only moving with the arm the right brake pad. That's why we have to get it as close as we can to the left. But you can still adjust the left one, but it's a little more complicated. And what you have to do is remove the caliper by removing those two screws, and then we can adjust it behind there. So I'll just do that right now. As you can see here, there's a screw that I can change and turn that way to make the brake caliper move. So if I turn it clockwise, it will get the brake caliper closer. If I turn it anti-clockwise, it will get it back further from the disc. So sometimes if it's not well adjusted, that's what you may have to do. but most of the time this is fine. But if you do, this is how you do it. Now we'll just put back the brake caliper on. Remember to tighten those screws nice and strong, both on the caliper and also on the cable here. You want to make sure that nothing is going to be removed. Now we can switch on to the brake handle. Finally, we'll adjust from here on the brake handle. We've got that same screw that we want to change, so if we're moving anti-clockwise, then that's making it tighter. If we're going clockwise, then it's making it less tight. You can tighten it as much as you want, as long as you're still not hitting the disc. I'm still good. I'll give it a test at the same time. Yep, that's nice and strong. And finally, I can turn back this small, well, bigger screw towards the brake handle, that way to tighten and lock it in place. I was on the left brake handle because I was working on the rear brake caliper. You'd go on the right brake handle if you're working on the front brake caliper, which would be essentially the same process.